Hi, this video is going to help you remember the key events in the recovery of Weimar Germany from 1923 to 1929 using two words, Golden Age. There are different interpretations of this period, the Roaring Twenties interpretation that everything was going wonderfully and life was great, and the House of Cards interpretation that yes, things seemed good, but actually it all collapsed in 1929 when American banks and Wall Street demanded their money back and Germany fell apart. Each letter of Golden Age is going to help you remember the key points of this period. So Golden, G, Good Government, O, Opposition Weak, L, Locarno Treaty and League of Nations, D, the Dawes Plan and the Young Plan, E, End of Hyperinflation, End of Occupation of the Ruhr, and N, New Homes. Age, Abstract Art and Culture, G, Girls are Equal, and E, Employment. Our first letter of Golden Age is G, Good Government. If you watched my previous video about the problems in early Weimar Germany, you'll know they had a constitution and a voting system called proportional representation. All you need to know about this is it meant there were lots of different parties elected to represent Germans in the Reichstag. And in the early part of Weimar Germany, the different parties couldn't agree, couldn't make decisions, and there was a problem. But from 1923 to 1929, Stresemann manages to form a coalition government with his own right-wing DVP party, the left-wing SPD party, and the Centre party. These three parties manage to form a government that gets on pretty well, makes decisions, and run the country. So from 1923 to 1929, it's a golden age because G, there's a good government. Our next letter of Golden is O, the opposition is weak. The two parties who didn't believe in democracy, the communists and the Nazis, both performed really badly at the elections in 1924 and in 1928. So it seems like most Germans are supporting democracy. Although in the background the Nazis are reorganising, but we can definitely say from 1923 to 1929 the opposition to democracy in Germany was weak. Our next letter of Golden Age is L, Locarno Treaty and League of Nations. Stresemann in this period is Germany's foreign minister and he manages to negotiate a number of deals, particularly the Locarno Treaty with France and Belgium, where Germany agrees to respect its western borders. Doing that allows them to be invited to join the League of Nations, where all the most powerful countries in the world get together to discuss how the world should be run. It's a little bit like the United Nations today. There is a weakness in the Locarno Treaty because it doesn't discuss Germany's borders in the east, and Hitler will use this later, but for now, in the 1920s, it's a golden age because the Locarno Treaty and the League of Nations give back Germany international respect and make Germans feel like the rest of the world is listening to them. Our next letter is D, the Dawes Plan and the Young Plan. These are the most important deals that Stresemann makes. First of all, the Dawes Plan in 1923. Germany's economy was a mess. Germany had agreed to pay back reparations to the winners of World War I, but couldn't afford to do so, and that started the Ruhr crisis, which we'll talk about next. In 1923, America agrees to loan Germany money so that it can keep paying back its reparations, and then Germany uses that American money to invest in rebuilding its factories, rebuilding its economy, and creating jobs. So on the surface, things seem pretty good. The Dawes Plan and the Young Plan are both loans of money to help Germany invest, and also they slightly reduce the reparations payments, making it easier for Germany to repay its debt. But many people criticise the Young and the Dawes Plans. They say that Germany's economy is being tied in debt to America, Britain and France, and this will have catastrophic consequences for Germany come the 1929 Wall Street crash. Our next letter of Golden Age is E, ending hyperinflation and ending the French occupation of the Ruhr. If you watched my last video, you know the French army had occupied Germany's richest industrial area to take back what they were owed in reparations. The German workers then went on strike, and to pay them, the German government printed money, causing a massive increase in prices and economic chaos. Well, this was solved really simply by Stresemann. He comes in as Chancellor in 1923, creates a new currency called the Rentenmark, and stabilises Germany's currency and Germany's prices. As a result of this, a couple of years later, 1925, the French army agreed to leave the Ruhr, and Germans feel like their country is back to being safe and ruled by Germans alone. Our final letter of Golden is N, New Homes. Following World War I, a lot of German soldiers came home and found economic chaos, unemployment and homelessness. There just weren't enough homes. So the new SPD coalition government decided to invest some of the Dawes Plan money in a huge programme of house building. Not only did it build houses, but it also created jobs and helped to reduce homelessness. So this is a great example of why, even though it might have been built on shaky foundations, for people that lived through the 1920s, it was actually a time when life was improving. Our first letter of Age is A, Abstract Art and Culture. This is probably what Weimar Germany is most well known for internationally. Painters like George Grosz and Otto Dix painted vibrant, modern scenes, often showing people enjoying themselves at the new cabarets, listening to black American jazz music. If you look at the drummers in both of these images, they are both black drummers. As well as music, it's really famous for architecture. Bauhaus architecture is still world famous, founded in Weimar in the 1920s. Not just incredible modern buildings, but also really intricate modern design, which still influences the world today. The morals at this cabaret sometimes sometimes seem quite shocking and quite loose, with women getting on stage, dancing, smoking, sometimes dressing as men. And although this is seen as the golden age, it did annoy some conservative Germans, particularly in the countryside. People began to call out perhaps for some kind of change, some kind of more conservative party, perhaps like the Nazis. Our next letter of age is G, girls are equal. The 1920s is definitely a golden age for women's rights, at least in Germany's cities. Women in Weimar Germany could vote at 20 years old, exactly the same age as men, which is very different to Britain, where women had to wait until they were 30 years old to vote. Also a golden age for women's employment. Millions of German women joined the workforce and therefore had money to go out and enjoy themselves, going out to cafes, going out to bars, dressing how they wanted and living their lives with a certain amount of freedom. Our final letter of golden age is E, employment. Those working in Weimar Germany had the highest wages in Europe. German wages were good, benefits were good, and there were benefits for old age pensioners. So if you lived through this period, it really did feel like a golden age. People had money in their pockets. However, it wasn't shared equally. If you look at this graph, you can see employment did remain high, and particularly for the middle classes. So not everybody shared equally in the golden age. And all the way through this period, the German government is overspending on benefits, which again, you could argue this whole thing is a house of cards, which collapsed in 1929 with the Wall Street crash. So there you have it, the key information you need to remember to decide your own interpretation. Was this a golden age, or was it a house of cards, a disaster waiting to happen? Good government, opposition weak, Locarno Treaties and League of Nations, Dawes Plan and the Young Plan, ending hyperinflation, ending the occupation of the Ruhr, new homes, abstract art and culture, girls being equal, and employment, the highest wages in Europe. Was the 1920s in Germany a golden age? You decide.